When I turned 60, I didn't fall into a crisis, but I also didn't feel like celebrating. There was this quiet, uncomfortable weight in my chest that I just couldn't brush off. It wasn't panic exactly, but something was off. Like I was looking ahead at this next chapter in my life and realizing my ducks were not in a row. Not even close. I'd done a lot in my life, learned so much, followed winding paths that felt right at the time, but still I had this nagging feeling like I'd been circling something important without ever really landing on it. That birthday marked a shift. I didn't want to keep waiting. I didn't want to keep circling my ideas, tweaking things behind the scenes, or mentally rehearsing a life I still hadn't let myself fully live. Because the truth was, if I didn't make some real shifts, there was a very real chance I'd never go after the dreams and desires I'd quietly imagined for years, but rarely prioritized. And that was no longer acceptable to me. So I started making different choices, tiny ones, quiet ones, but really meaningful ones. Here are 21 of those decisions. Not life changing all at once, but together they absolutely changed the way I show up for my life now. I stopped pretending I was fine when I wasn't. Instead of minimizing how I felt or brushing off discomfort, I let myself admit when something wasn't working. That honesty gave me direction. It was the first step toward real change in my life. I stopped waiting for a magical stretch of time to figure life out. The idea that clarity would show up once everything else calmed down, I let that go. I started working with the time I had, which was often imperfect, scattered, but always real, and I made that enough. I started noticing what drained me and stopped allowing it. Sometimes it was overthinking. Sometimes it was staying in limbo instead of making a decision. Sometimes it was just being too available to everything all at once. I started paying attention to where my energy went and whether it actually needed to be there. I chose to take my own thoughts seriously. I stopped brushing off what I thought just because no one else around me was saying it. My perspective mattered, even if I was the only one who saw it that way. I let go of needing someone else to be on board before I moved forward. Even when I believed in something deeply, I used to wait for someone else to validate it before I acted. Letting go of that need for agreement gave me the freedom to follow what I knew, whether anyone else understood it or not. I noticed I was making things harder than they had to be, whether it was overcomplicating a plan or holding myself to unreasonable standards. I began looking for where I could simplify. This led to less friction and a lot more follow through. I began choosing from desire instead of duty. So rather than asking what I should do, I started asking what actually felt right to me. That one shift helped me reconnect with what I genuinely cared about. I gave up being the reliable one when it cost me self trust. I realized that constantly being dependable for others meant I was becoming unreliable with myself. So I stopped breaking promises to me. I started reminding myself it's never too late. I said it often, not as a pep talk, but as a truth I was choosing to believe. The timing didn't matter as much as whether I was willing to begin. I dedicated 5 minutes a day to my goals without overwhelm or intimidation. I didn't try to tackle everything at once. I picked one small thing and gave it 5 minutes. That consistency helped me build momentum without burning out. I stopped waiting to feel confident and focused on being ready enough. I realized confidence wasn't going to show up first. So I started moving forward while still feeling uncertain. and found that progress builds its own kind of confidence. I wrote, I'm allowed to want more as a reminder. It was something I needed to see over and over and over again because wanting more wasn't about being ungrateful or greedy, which is how I had seen it. It was actually about being honest with myself. I let myself pivot without calling it starting over. I stopped framing change as failure. Shifting direction wasn't erasing anything. It was just me adjusting based on what I'd learned. I stopped waiting to feel 100% ready. That perfect level of readiness does not exist. I moved forward when I felt just 51% sure, just enough to take the next step. And that's all that mattered in that moment. I built structure instead of chasing motivation. I stopped relying on inspiration to just show up. I built routines that supported the work and let motivation be the bonus, not the requirement. I accepted that people might misunderstand my choices. Not everyone was going to get it. I stopped trying to explain myself to those who weren't really listening and got back to focusing on what felt right for me. I stopped over researching and started experimenting. Instead of looking for the perfect way to begin, I just began. I learned more from trying than I ever did from just preparing. I started using envy as a clue, not a flaw. I stopped judging myself for feeling envious. Instead, I paid attention to what it was pointing to, what I might want more of in my own life. I focused on the smallest next step forward. When I didn't know what to do, I looked for one simple action. It didn't have to solve everything, it just had to move me. I gave up the fantasy of being rescued with the answer. I stopped waiting for the perfect mentor, the perfect book, or the perfect opportunity to show me the way. I decided to build my own path, even if I was figuring it out as I went. I started recognizing overwhelm for what it actually was, fear. Instead of labeling myself as scattered or incapable, I got honest. Most of the time, I wasn't overwhelmed. I was afraid. Naming it helped me move through it. These decisions were not about reinventing myself overnight, but they added up. They shifted how I think, how I move, and how I show up for what I want. The circumstances absolutely change. The timeline changed, and yes, I changed too along the way. Not into someone else, though, but into someone I trust. Someone who no longer sidelines her own life, someone who creates it. Thanks for hanging out. Next chapter's coming soon.